In continuation of my card content series on That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime Season 3, in today's video we'll be going over the recently released Episode 3, which mainly covers the aftermath of the war with Clement's forces, the return of Rimuru's subordinates to Tempest, and how peace has affected everyone in the city. We'll also be getting a brief checkup on Diablo's mission in the Falmuth Kingdom, and like my previous videos, there were some aspects from the light novel that were removed from the episode, such as world building details, scene changes, and exposition from characters, so we'll be discussing about all those in today's video. As usual, a spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't watched the episode yet or might find the card content information I've mentioned to be spoilers. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Now then, Season 3 Episode 3 is titled Peaceful Days, and unlike the previous episode which covers multiple chapters of the Volume 7 light novel, the newest episode only covers the contents found in Chapter 2 of the light novel. So the episode starts with Shuna and Silver returning from the Puppet Kingdom of Jistav, but the light novel actually provides a more detailed account of why Shuna and Silver did not return to Tempest earlier. Essentially, Shuna had depleted most of her mana supply during the battle with Endowment and did not have enough to use spatial teleportation, so she was forced to stay in Jistav for a few days to replenish her mana supply. And for Silver, he could have easily returned to Tempest if he wanted to with Shadow Motion, but because he was tasked by Rimuru to stay by Shuna's side, he decided to wait alongside her so that they can both travel back together. Furthermore, the episode would take away Shuna's dialogue during this scene because she was supposed to be the one that explained to Rimuru on why Hakuro did not return with them and was staying in Jistav to help Gyal investigate Clement's castle in the light novel. Instead, this dialogue was given to Benimaru, who wasn't even supposed to be present during this meeting because in the light novel he will only return later that night, although I can understand the change in the anime. Benimaru was the commander of the entire operation after all, and it was his job to deliver this type of information to Rimuru. But I digress, the light novel also covers the reasons Hakuro chose to stay behind. 1. He could not use spatial teleportation, and Shuna only has enough mana to teleport herself. And 2. Since Hakuro treated Shuna like a precious granddaughter, he doesn't mind helping her deal with the leftover chores in Jistav while she returns to Tempest. That said, regarding Benimaru's conversation with Rimuru, much of what they talked about in the episode, like how some of the prisoners along the lycanthropes will be living in Tempest to learn vocational skills, while some will be working under Gyal to help in the reconstruction of the Beast Kingdom Eurozania, went accordingly as the light novel. Also, when Benimaru mentioned that Gabriel was currently helping the Dragon Faithful with the aftermath of the war, the light novel briefly shows Rimuru internally praising not only Gabriel but Gyal as well for being quite reliable when it comes to situations like this. And I found it funny how Rimuru was roasted by Wisdom King Raphael for calling out the behavior of both Shuna and Benimaru as irresponsible when they were simply copying him for always pushing the responsibilities to others. But it's nice that Rimuru even acknowledges how everyone has become so capable, being able to carry out their own decisions even without his guidance. And it was cute that it made Rimuru proud but somewhat lonely and sad knowing this. Moving on, Diablo finally returns from his peace treaty signing with the Falmuth Kingdom as seen in the ending scene of the previous episode a few days later to deliver the 1500 stellar gold coins he has managed to collect from King Amarus, but the episode doesn't really convey the significance of that amount. That's because in the light novel, Rimuru was able to learn from King Gazer Dwago about the true rarity of a single stellar gold coin. Basically, Dwagon can only produce a single stellar gold coin per month, and it sometimes isn't even a guarantee of success, making its availability extremely rare with only less than 10,000 pieces currently in circulation. So this means that Rimuru was already in possession of more than 10% of the entire supply, giving Tempest quite a bargaining advantage on the international stage, which wasn't really emphasized in the episode. Regardless, Diablo proceeds to explain about the progress of his mission in Falmuth and everything he said to Rimuru, even up to the part involving Yom's role in helping King Amarus was pretty much the same as the light novel. However, just before Rimuru warns Diablo to be careful about being confident in his plan, there was a brief moment in the light novel where Rimuru was contemplating about the various scenarios that might happen if Diablo's plan failed. For example, if King Edward decides to continue paying the reparation fees, Tempest will no longer hold their actions accountable for the attack, or if Amarus is somehow eliminated by the new king, or he chooses to side with his brother, Rimuru will simply destroy the Falmuth Kingdom, even at the cost of his own international reputation. Now, after this discussion, Rimuru will offer 500 stellar gold coins for Diablo to use as funds for his plans, but as seen in the episode, the offer was rejected, and Diablo tries to reassure Rimuru by volunteering to participate in the upcoming war if needed, but in the episode, Rimuru orders Diablo to lay low, and the light novel would actually provide a reason for this. That's because he understands how strong Diablo actually is, and if Diablo's strength is seen by the humans, it will only cause them to fear monsters more and further set back his objective of having peaceful coexistence with human societies. But continuing on, after Diablo finished with his report, there wasn't much changes in the episode about his explanation on Archbishop Rahim being summoned by the Western Holy Church to be questioned about the battle between Falmuth and Tempest. Although the light novel does add a minor point about Rimuru complaining how he wished the church would simply leave Tempest alone and treat their country the same way as Dogon, turning a blind eye and ignoring each other. And Rimuru also mentions that he is willing to compromise as much as possible to avoid potential sources of conflict with the Holy Church, but if they insist on fighting, he won't hesitate to destroy them without mercy. Honestly, it was such a shame the episode removed this badass moment for Rimuru. It would have shown people that he isn't just a pacifist, but rather someone with plenty of patience and restraint. Nevertheless, when Rimuru suggested on recording a message that Rahim can bring back to the Western Holy Church, we see them being interrupted by Gupta in the episode, although in the light novel, Rimuru manages to finish the recording and Rahim was immediately sent back with it, but a few days would pass without any response from the Holy Church, so Rimuru decides to ignore the matter for now. In any case, Rimuru was informed by Gupta about the return of Gabiru along with the lycanthropes and prisoners that will be staying in Tempest, so he goes to greet them. He first meets with Albus and Sophia, where he explains to them on how Rigel has prepared work for the arrivals in the episode, but in the light novel, there was a small detail of Rimuru stating that he plans on opening vocational classrooms to cultivate more professional personnel if they desire to permanently live in Tempest. Now, after Sophia and Albus left, Gabiru soon arrives to report about his time spent with the Dragon Faithful while also delivering a letter to Rimuru from Milim, and the contents discussed by them in the episode involving the meaning of the letter basically followed the light novel, so with that, Gabiru returns to continue his work inside the Silk Cave. A month would then pass with Tempest becoming more active and lively with the new residents moving into the city. It's here that Gal returns using spatial teleportation, looking quite exhausted because he was apparently having a difficult time coordinating and organizing the prisoners and lycanthropes to work, so he will seek advice from Rimuru about this issue, and much of that conversation pretty much follows the light novel. Honestly, I was quite surprised they did not skip this entire interaction with Gal because it was essentially just filler, but it's one of the many reasons why I think Tensura is one of the best isekai series that actually tries to follow the source material as much as possible without changing too much of the original content. Nonetheless, once Rimuru heard about Gal's complaints, they both went to have drinks at Trainee Spa, and again, I was surprised the anime even brought in locations shown in the spin-off anime Tensura Nikki, which is such a nice attention to detail. Anyways, after the drinking session with Gal, there was an anime original sequence involving Rimuru briefly talking to Shion, and the following scenes in the episode actually happened quite differently as compared to the light novel. To first explain, in the light novel, after drinking with Gal for the entire night, Rimuru will immediately call for a meeting with all his executives in the next morning, unlike what we see in the anime version, with the meeting taking place at the end of episode 3, and because the order of the scenes was altered, Rimuru's meeting with Hakuro was also supposed to have happened earlier in the light novel, right before the meeting took place. However, much of their conversation about what was discovered at Clement's castle in the episode still followed the light novel, so it was fine that it's a standalone scene. Having said that, in regards to the 3 separate scenes shown in the episode involving Rigel reporting to Rimuru about the return of the merchants, Sowe reporting about his survey for the highway, and the meeting with Rimuru's executives were actually supposed to all be a singular sequence in the light novel, and personally I can understand the creative choice to make the 3 scenes separate, because having all the exposition dumped in a single meeting might feel somewhat boring for viewers, whereas if they did separate scenes, it allows all the characters present to have their own personal moments with Rimuru, giving a more intimate feelings to the scenes. But I digress, going over the scene involving Rigel in the episode first, his report on the merchants returning with help from Fuse and the Sorceress Dynasty Saren declaring former ties to Tempest were all the same as the light novel. Then moving over to the scene with Sowe and the other Kijins discussing Rimuru about the highways that Tempest will be building, it was basically the same as the light novel with only some minor cut content. For instance, it was mentioned how the monster tribes living near the proposed sites for the highway all agreed because Rimuru provided free housing for those affected by the construction, and he even reveals his plans on turning those monster tribes into travelling waypoints in the future with hotels to service not only monster folks but human travellers as well. That said, Soe's following report on the Tango tribe and Shuna accusing Benimaru of wanting to go on a date with Albus again will happen according to the light novel. However, there was an additional line in the light novel where Rimuru was internally jealous at the idea that Benimaru might find a girlfriend and run away with her, while he was still stuck with no one, which would have definitely added more comedy into this scene. With that, the final scene of the episode will be the meeting between Rimuru and his executives, but the initial portion where everyone voiced their opinions in response to the news that Rimuru now has full authority over the Great Jura Forest were pretty much the same as the light novel. However, when Rimuru proposes they hold a festival to welcome the visitors coming to pay respects to him, there were some minor details removed from the episode. Essentially, in the light novel, since Rimuru already planned on announcing his status as a Demon Lord to the world, he thought they might as well just invite and reach out to the sentient species living inside the Great Dwarf Forest, while also inviting foreign dignitaries, merchants, and other influential people from human society all together at once. Additionally, because Rimuru knew everyone in Tempest were already quite skilled at organizing festivals and celebrations, he wanted to test the skills of their nation at hosting an international level event. However, the main reason Rimuru had suggested on hosting a festival was that he wanted to attract new residents to help increase their population, just like the episode mentioned, but the light novel actually goes a bit deeper on why. To explain, Rimuru knew that their current pool of skilled workers would not be sustainable since it comprised mostly of the lycanthropes, meaning that they'll eventually return to Eurozania after the Reconstruction finish, leaving a void in their workforce. So before that happens, Rimuru needed to acquire and train new people who are permanent residents of Tempest, and the festival will provide a perfect opportunity to help promote their town. Nonetheless, after explaining his plans to everyone, they all agreed to the proposal, and similar to the light novel, they decided to leave the discussion of the festival details for a future time. Also, the previous two scenes I mentioned will actually take place after this particular conversation in the light novel. In any case, that was all the cut content found in Season 3 Episode 3 of the anime, and this is probably my favorite episode so far because of the way they adapted some of the scenes from the light novel to give the individual side characters their own personal moments with Rimuru. And the Tensura Nikki reference was a welcome surprise as well, and hopefully they'll bring more Easter eggs like this from other Tensura media into the anime. Maybe we'll even see a cameo of Ramiya from the Ways of the Monster Nation manga.
でも毒無効の効果のせいで全然酔えないんだよな。ま、二日酔いにならないのは助かるけど。
But yeah, I definitely enjoyed episode 3, and what do you guys like about the episode so far? Feel free to share your favorite moments and opinions on the episode down below. Also, if you enjoyed this cut content video, remember to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button for more cut content videos as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.